Hello, in this video I'll be showing you how to make a gluten-free carrot cake from scratch with cream cheese frosting. The first ingredient in the gluten-free carrot cake is the flour. I've used the Bob's Red Mill 1-to-1 baking flour in multiple different recipes and it always seems to work pretty well for me. It also has xanthan gum included, so for this recipe you want 2.5 cups of gluten-free flour, and if your flour does not include the xanthan gum, add 3/4 teaspoons to the mix. So as you can see, I spooned the flour into my measuring cup, and then after the cup was full, leveled it off with a knife back over the bag. I did this because the gluten-free flours are traditionally heavier than flour with gluten in them. If you scoop the flour directly out of the bag, you could be packing the flour tighter into the measuring cup and then have a more inconsistent measurement at the end of the recipe. Next, add 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder. I've tried this recipe many different ways, and when I use more than 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder or even mix in baking soda, I get a really high center in the cake, but I find that 2.5 teaspoons of baking powder keeps the cake nice and fluffy without having a super high center. Next, I add the warming spices. This is the cinnamon, nutmeg, cloves, allspice, and ginger, followed by a 1/2 teaspoon of salt, and then whisk to combine all of the ingredients together. Chop pecans to put into the cake. These are definitely optional, but I like the texture that they give. This method of chopping pecans is how my mom taught me when we were younger, and I think it's a lot of fun to do as well. You just cover the pecans with a paper towel or towel and hit them with a meat tenderizer until they're to the size that you would like. Another reason I like breaking the pecans this way is because once they're to the size you want, you can dump them into the batter just straight from the paper towel. Next, prepare the carrots for the carrot cake. I used 3 large carrots for this, and I scrubbed the dirt off the outside under running water before grating them into this bowl. When time allows, I like to grate the carrots myself rather than using a shortcut. In my experience, this adds more moisture to the cake and gives it an overall more tender texture. Additionally, I feel like there's more satisfaction in eating the finished cake when you put more work into it, and that's why I enjoy baking in general. It's important to have the carrots and pecans prepared before starting to do the wet ingredients of the batter. Because we're going to cream together the eggs and the sugar, we want to work fast once those are creamed together to get the cake in the oven before any of that air loses its texture and buoyancy. After the eggs and sugar have been creamed together, we'll gently fold the carrots, pecans, remaining wet ingredients, and the flour into the mixture without knocking out any air bubbles. In a separate bowl, add 4 eggs, a cup of granulated sugar, and a cup of brown sugar. You might notice there's more brown sugar in this gluten-free carrot cake recipe than in other non-gluten-free recipes. The reason for that is because the gluten-free flour tends to absorb more moisture than the non-gluten-free flours, and the brown sugar has more moisture than the granulated sugar, which will help keep the gluten-free carrot cake moist. Cream together the eggs and the sugar. This step puts air into the eggs, which will make your cake fluffy. And because you're combining both the egg whites and the egg yolks here, you don't need to worry about over whipping as if you were just whipping the egg whites, because the fat in the egg yolks will prevent that over whipping from happening. Additionally, the sugar will provide structure to the cake that will help keep the air within the eggs as the cake is baking. I'm using my hand mixture here so that I could film this for everybody to see. However, normally I would do this in my KitchenAid mixer, and I would just let it run for 3 or 4 minutes before turning it off. Throughout the time that you're creaming the eggs and the sugar together, you should see the mixture start to thicken. It should lighten in color, and it should grow in size too, come higher up the bowl. Now that the eggs and sugar are creamed together, we're going to work quickly to try and get this into the oven as fast as possible. So add the pecans, add the carrots, and add 1 cup of oil and a 1/2 cup of butter. I have read that you can substitute applesauce for some of the oil. I've personally never tried it because I don't like the taste of applesauce, but it's a good option if you want a lower fat recipe. Now that all the wet ingredients are fully mixed into the batter, I spoon in 1/2 of the flour mixture and fold that in, and then once it's well incorporated, fold in the other 1/2 as well. Split the batter evenly between 2 greased 9-inch round cake pans. Bake the cakes on the middle rack at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 35 to 40 minutes, or until a fork inserted into the center comes out clean. Let the cakes cool just enough that you can touch the pans without burning yourself, but not so much that they're completely cool. If you let the cake cool completely before dumping it out of the pan, it can tend to stick. Once they're out, leave them on the cooling rack to cool completely before frosting with the cream cheese frosting. While the carrot cake is cooling, it's time to make the cream cheese frosting. I mixed together 8 tablespoons or 1 stick of softened unsalted butter and 12 ounces of softened cream cheese. I mix these together on medium speed until there's no more lumps and the butter and cream cheese are smooth and blended together. I also make sure to get any of the butter and cream cheese out of the mixer attachments and stir it back into the mix. Then I add 2 cups of powdered sugar and continue mixing until that's well combined. Every time I make cream cheese frosting, I always leave some of the powdered sugar out so I can adjust the thickness after I've mixed it together and done a taste test. So this is what I did here as well. After I had mixed the powdered sugar, cream cheese, and butter together, I tasted it and I wanted a little more sweetness in it, so I added about another half cup of powdered sugar along with 2 teaspoons of vanilla. The main reason I always do my powdered sugar in stages is because I find it's easier to add powdered sugar than it is to correct with adding butter or cream cheese. At least for me, I always forget to put extra out, so I just balance it with the powdered sugar. Once your icing is smooth and to the taste that you like, it's time to ice the cake. I am by no means an expert icer. My main task in icing a cake is just to get all the frosting on so that I can eat the cake quickly. However, I do have some rhyme or reason to how I do this. So since I'm stacking the 2 cakes on top of each other, I'm actually icing the bottom of the first cake here so that it will lay flat against the bottom of the other cake I put on top of it. After I have a nice layer of cream cheese frosting on top of this cake, I put some pecans in between just to add a little bit of texture, and then place the next cake on top of it. Then I ice the top of this piece of cake and then move around to the sides to make sure all the sides of both cakes are evenly coated. Finally, it's time to cut the cake and enjoy what you baked. Thanks for watching this video on how to make gluten-free carrot cake. Let me know in the comments how this worked out for you, and as always, like and subscribe below to see more content.